All right, great. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're gonna be talking about something that I believe is the single most underrated kind of opportunity in e-commerce, and that is how small UX and CRO wins can drive exponential growth, and why I kind of like to refer to CRO as compound revenue optimization instead. Today it will be me, myself, and Maria from Mouseflow that will be running the session, and I'll be kind of running the first part of it, and then Maria will take the second part of it. So today on the call we do have, like, obviously we see some of existing clients and some familiar names, but we have like some new ones. So briefly on who we are. So StudioForty9, it's the Ireland's leading partner in retail e-commerce. So by now we're a team of 45 experts helping many of the Ireland's biggest retailers like Intersport Elvery's, Correct Dawn, where we kind of help them both on strategy consultation in terms of builds, migrations, how to kind of grow, building roadmaps for them. So basically a full e-commerce service offering. And our mission is to become the most transformative partner in the industry. I'm Dancho, for the ones that haven't met me before. I am senior e-commerce strategist at StudioForty9. Prior joining StudioForty9, I've spent 15 years driving growth for premium brands, ranging from 5 to 50 million, 100 million, sorry, in revenue, and including like names like Nespresso, Fjällräven, Kony Travel, Electrolux across the various different verticals. And since a year ago, I decided to take the kind of more of an agency consulting path and bring that brand level maturity in the world of omnichannel retail. I lead our UX and CRO practice here, and this is what we're going to kind of mainly be talking about today. The agenda for today, so what we're going to cover is we'll start with like StudioForty9 growth framework that we kind of use in the work with our clients. We're going to then continue to why CRO is the most effective and efficient lever, the power of the 1% rule and what that is. And then I will share some case studies and some real kind of conversion killers that I have identified, like in the kind of audit work that I have been doing. At the end, we will have also a short overview of what Mouseflow is and how it enables our optimization effort, paired with a short demo that will be done by Maria. And then finally, we'll kind of leave the space and the floor for any Q&As. All right, so let's get started. At StudioForty9, we use like the OTCR growth framework. So basically, that is a holistic growth framework that comprises of 4 main pillars, starting with an offering, which is the core of every business. What is the core offering that kind of retailer offers when it comes to product, assortment, and there's also like what differentiate that business. You know, it can be services, can be payment option, can be the value-added services. So that would kind of comprise the core of one business. Then the second pillar would be actually traffic. So how do we attract visitors to this online store through marketing? The third one would be conversion, and how do we turn those visitors into customers? And then lastly would be retention, which is making existing customers come back and return and continuing to be customers. So it's important to know that working across all the 4 core areas enables a retailer to achieve a sustainable and profitable growth over time and increase the e-commerce maturity as well. Today, for the purpose of this webinar, we will be kind of more focused in the conversion pillar, which is turning the visitors into customers through merchandising, usability, storytelling, conversion rate optimization. So would like to kind of keep this kind of webinar as tangible as possible and kind of as practical as possible. So pardon, we'll look at an example that we're going to kind of try to kind of follow us throughout the webinar. So we kind of like maybe stating the obvious here, but we all kind of like could understand that revenue or top line sales on the website. It's basically your traffic that comes on your site multiplied by the conversion rate, multiplied by the average order value, gives you the top line sales. So let's look at an example figures. In this case, for this example, our top line sales or revenue, it's 1.2 million annually. And that basically is made of like 1.6 million session. Let's say the average conversion is 1.5% with an average order value of 50 euros per order. That gives us 1.2 million. So let's say, how do we make more revenue? Let's say you want to grow your revenue. There are three main levers how you could pull that out on a journey level. The first one would be to increase the traffic. The second one would be to increase your average order value. And the third one would be to increase your conversion rate. So say we put like as our target, our goal to increase the revenue by 30% year on year. So how like those three levers will play out to reach that goal. So one would be to spend more money into advertising and paid ads in order to increase your traffic, those 1.6 million sessions converted per month from 133 to 173,000 per month. That would be option one. Option two would be to increase your average order value from 50 euro to 65 euro per month. And the last one would be to increase the conversion rate from 1.5 to 1.95 per month. The latest one, or like the conversion rate, offer the lowest kind of cost in terms of achieving that long-term goal and return. So we say conversion is the kind of most efficient way. And let's say why CRO matters. So I had a chance to attend the UK Expo last year, and IMRG, which is their kind of national body of statistics, they kind of presented the figures between like out of like 220 retailers through various verticals, what were their key challenges for growth in the first half of the year. And what came out was that majority of the challenges were related to high acquisition costs, high marketing costs, and increased competition on the market. When they asked how you pivot in 2020, in the second half of the year, where are you going to focus your efforts? Majority or 62% of the retailers said that they're going to focus on improving their website, their UX, and work more actively with the site and exploring new sales channels. Why? It's because, acquisition costs, with search and paid social are skyrocketing, and also competition is fiercer. So, it's harder to buy your growth. You can buy it, but it will be a really an expensive game to play. So rather like it's more cost effective to focus on converting the traffic that you already have. And that's where, CRO comes into play and where it matters. We all know the term CRO maybe stands for conversion rate optimization, which is kind of more of a mainstream definition. I would love, and would like to challenge and to change like the definition to kind of instead maybe talk about compound revenue optimization. And why compound revenue optimization? Well, in our kind of hopefully, in our like regular lives, we all have save regularly, and like similar like a compound interest can turn a modest and regular savings into a substantial egg nest over longer period of time. Similarly, within e-commerce, stacking small incremental wins month after month could lead to exponential growth without needing massive, risky overhauls of the website. So CRO in the online world would be kind of an equivalent to kind of, let's say, merchandising or optimizing your physical store in order more of the footfall that enters your shop exits with a product in their hand. And then, of course, hopefully they pay for it and then they exit the store. So let's illustrate what do we mean here. Again, we can try to kind of use the numbers that we kind of stated earlier. So here it's where I want to introduce the 1% rule and the power of that 1% rule. So let's say, again, using the same examples, we have 1.2 million annually that we're making on the site, which is kind of 100K a month. And you decide to make 2 small optimizations every month, 2 small optimizations. And each little optimization is kind of like increasing your revenue by just 1%. Sounds very little, right? But again, let's do the maths. So if we look at this, again, similar to compounding interest rate, if we kind of layer out the 100K per month with those 1% improvements every month. So if the month 0, it's 100,000 euros, month 2 would be 101, month 2 would be 105, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, compounds. So by the end of the year, the monthly revenue will kind of move from 100,000 a month to 125,000 a month. So the extra revenue that we can generate in year 1 alone would be 150,000. That's pretty decent, within 1 year with very continuous little optimizations month after month. Let's see how the graph would look like after 3 years. Here is where the magic of compounding kicks in. So by the end of the year 3, we would be kind of hitting from the original 100K a month, 200K a month. That's doubling the monthly revenue we generate. And then looking at over the course of 3 years, that would be adding additional 2 million to your business. I think where it's the most impactful and when it's kind of like almost beyond belief when we kind of look at the graphs is when we look at on a 5-year period. Here we can see that, we'll come to a point where we can make 270K a month, and the extra revenue generated over the course of 5 years would be trailing around 5 million. So that's where kind of the power of compounding and continuous optimization, working on your site month after month, trying to tweak continuously, reaps the benefits on a long run. So hopefully that was kind of an easy enough to follow analogy of why it's kind of important to continuously optimize the user experience online. So you may question where and how do we find those 1% wins? So normally, we start with diagnostics through doing a UX or CRO audit, which is not just kind of like a quick look at the site, what actually, it's not working, but it's a kind of a structured evaluation of the digital experience. It is evidence-based, and we look at it robustly. So we look and we use tools like Mouseflow, which actually help us to kind of get like a more deeper look in terms of how the customers are navigating through the site. Like where do they click? What do they interact with? Where do they encounter frictions and troubles? How far along the page do they click? Is your content that it's on the bottom of or in the middle of your homepage, let's say, have enough eyeballs into it? So we look at all these kind of aspects in much more in depth. So the characteristics of the audits that kind of we provide are diagnostic, right? So we want to kind of focus on identifying issues, evidence-based, so not only opinions, but actually proper, evidence from your actual users using the site. When it comes to later on the findings, needs to be action guiding, so prioritize recommendations, and non-prescriptive. So you may wonder, like, okay, that sounds great, but still, like, why would I invest in a UX or CRO audit? So One is, as I mentioned, it's data driven. It's actually backed by real data, user recordings, heat maps, click patterns, actual user behavior. We all kind of, when we look at our sites, we might know certain things that we could improve, but I think the value of the audit comes in the hidden clues. Actually, it's figuring out and finding out what we don't currently know, that we are unaware of, that user struggles with, and as well as where do we start, right? Like, so we could have like a massive list of things that we want to do, but what, makes the needle most, and where should we start first, and then what comes second. Some of the market research I kind of like found for the purpose of the webinar, like, why it's important to invest in kind of audits and why they're important, are from like a couple of from TopTal saying 88% of users are less likely to return to a site after a poor experience. Forrester, in their data and their research, claims that €1 invested in improving the experience brings €100 in return, which is pretty significant ROI there. Obviously, optimized user experience increases conversion rate, and a lot of kind of starting up online businesses tend to fail due to poor usability. Would like to a little bit touch base on to give you a little bit more details in terms of like the kind of audits that we run at StudioForty9, what kind of normally it's part of that. So besides kind of starting with discovery and scoping, we look at your key KPIs and performance. We then also bring like best practice CRO checklist for core pages of your site. We bring our own kind of expertise from 15 more years in the industry in e-commerce. We deploy additional analytics in terms of Mouseflow, as we spoke. We also benchmark your experience with industry best practices, but also we do like competitor benchmark, and then we kind of deliver all those recommendations in a live session. So when we kind of finish the audit, you basically leave with a full report detailing all the kind of user behavior analysis, all the checklists, the deck with all the kind of insights and annotated examples, and as well as recommendation for what we should be focusing first, second, third, kind of for the roadmap planning. We also could, depending on what the clients want, we could also like expand on the core, that's a scope. And if we want to look at more how the acquisition channels are also working, and how we're driving traffic, we could also add like channel audits. If we want to kind of like, if a client wants to say, okay, recommendations are great, how do we kind of like bring them to life, how we could like visualize them, then we can also like take all those insights and recommendations and kind of produce like a new UI concept or a new mockup for a specific page, which I'm going to show you an example of later on. Or we could also analyze your reviews, like in-depth reviews on what your customers are speaking about you, like what they like, so you can double down on that, but also like what customers complain most about, and how like your reviews compare versus the one of your competitors, because today it's very easy to compare and benchmark different places where you can get a product. So last year alone, I just did like 20 plus audits for various clients across various verticals, whether it's kind of electrical, home and garden, fashion apparel, wellness and health, just to name a few. And I wanted to kind of share like at least 2 examples and 2 little studies out of the audits that we did. So let's take Havens as an example. Havens, it's a electrical omnichannel retailer, also big in home and garden. So they have seen healthy growth online year on year, but now they were at the point where they were a little bit challenged in terms of which direction to take when it comes to kind of focusing on the site improvements. So then we kind of did like an in-depth audit for them, deployed Mouseflow, looked at the entire user behavior. We run our kind of best practice CRO checklist. We focused on mobile, the mobile experience, and then we kind of found a lot of kind of pain points that they had on their website. So like their challenge was that they kind of didn't know exactly what the pain points were. So our audit located them precisely, allowing them to kind of implement the changes that reduces friction and kind of improves and boosts their conversion, for which they were kind of very, very pleased and were happy to leave us a testimonial. When we do these audits, like I think we put like a lot of effort into these audits. They can be 80 plus slides with a lot of kind of recommendations, so every client can get like a pretty decent understanding of where the starting point is and where they should kind of do next. Another case study I wanted to show was with Great Outdoors. As every business has certain targets, Great Outdoors also they have like a certain ambition in terms of where their conversion rate should be, and in this case, they were on a 30% below their target. And then we looked at what would make most sense for them, and since 41% of their traffic was landing on the product pages, we decided, comparing to Havens, instead of going abroad, to go deep and specific. So we decided to start with their product pages, and optimize the product pages first. Similar approach, deployed additional analytics, Mouseflow, focus mobile first, run like in-depth 69-point CRO checklist for the product page specifically, and looked at what can be done better. And we deployed these changes. It was deployed mid-December last year. So some early results show that we managed to, with the new improved product page, which I can show you in the slides to follow, we managed to increase their add to cart conversion by 6.4% versus their site average increase year on year. When we're looking at the previous period or the period before mid-December, the add to cart increased by 19%, and the bounce rate improved by 47% comparing year to year on the product page itself, comparing with the site average. So pretty positive early results. Obviously, we have a factor of seasonality, but just wanted to kind of like, obviously we monitor as well how the performance goes, but just some early very positive results. And now we can see a little bit of what did we do and how it looked before and after, so you can get a better context. So obviously by deploying Mouseflow, we were kind of be able to kind of analyze session, to do some session replays to exactly see how the customers are navigating and interacting with the product page, run some heat maps and click maps. And what we found out was that only 50% of the users were actually scrolling to the product information section, and that around 20% only were scrolling to the kind of more product recommendations or frequently bought together, and only 5 to 10% to kind of pairs well with this product pairs well with, which obviously it's a challenge because you want to kind of like maybe show complementary products, increase your average order value. So that was kind of important kind of finding to kind of know how many eyeballs actually are on different elements and sections of the page. We also looked at where people spend most time, and then that the image area was the kind of most interacted place with. So having said that, on the left-hand side, we have like the before version, how the product page looked like, and then on the right-hand side, we have the after. So as you can see, it's kind of like we did like numerous changes versus how it was before. So this is kind of the desktop version. But obviously, since the websites nowadays are mobile first, it's kind of even more important to focus on mobile. So this is how the mobile experience was before on the left-hand side, and then the one that is on the right-hand side. So few things we did over here. Obviously, the earlier design took a lot of space on mobile screen. It was kind of above the fold area was not kind of fully maximized. So we kind of tightened it up. We kind of put the elements that were more important on the top. We gave a more emphasis on the image. We put like some labeling for product differentiation. We brought some and lifted some key, USPs on the top, as well as we brought frequently bought together much higher, on the page, because that's where we kind of see from the audit before that like not many people were looking at it. We also lifted kind of and expanded above the fold area because we kind of hid the thumbnail images and we kind of made it into kind of a rotable carousel. So those were kind of like maybe more like the ones that were highlighting. There were still like a lot of smaller details when it comes to how we optimize around the CTA area with stock availability status, when they could expect the product to arrive. So all those are like a little frictions that are part of the purchase journey. So all of these kind of changes together when we measure before and after produce the early results that we saw. I'll skip that due to interest of time. But as I mentioned, last year we managed to do 20 plus different audits across different sites. So I just wanted to kind of do a summary of the top 4 that we kind of have seen recurring, across multiple retailers in Ireland. So one was the unclear value proposition. So when a user comes to the site, like how do they answer the question, why shall I buy from you and not from a competitor? So obviously not all the products are equal, not all the categories are equal, but there is no enough differentiated offering on the site or category leadership that comes to light. That was the first one. The second one was weak product presentation. Here comes the fact that one part is from a UX design CRO perspective, not following best practices in terms of how do we communicate the unique product features, complete the look, product recommendations, size guidance, and things like kind of returns. So all those kind of best practices not being followed, like weaker product presentation. The third part or conversion killer that we see, especially in visual heavy purchases like in department stores or fashion, it's the digital assets gap. So again, we present products in a similar way. There is no a differentiation. So here we always recommend prioritize your products and build like kind of a 3-tier content framework. What products are more important? You should kind of bring more content to it and present them better to kind of like differentiate that. That's kind of like a core, more images, more assets, more video, rather than just like a basic almost catalog upload feel. And the last and the fourth one I wanted to share with you was suboptimal browsing and discovery experience. So oftentimes, website can feel like just a huge catalog uploaded online. A lot of retailers, for an example, they show products, but they don't guide the customers in terms of the purchase, like what they would recommend the customer to buy or guide them into their decisions. Not all the customers, know you. Majority come for the first time on your website. So that guidance and discovery on the right product, it's very important. And doing all this kind of like findings, Mouseflow has been instrumental in enabling us to analyze user behavior and detect these conversion killers, so to say. So now I would just like to maybe pass to Maria to talk a little bit more about what Mouseflow is, how it helps, and even just provide a short demo so it does not feel like very more of an abstract tool that we're talking about.
Yes, yes, thank you, Dancho, and thank you for the invite to speak with you today. Just to give you a little bit of context, I'm gonna share my screen to show you what Mouseflow is. But to give you a little overview of you know myself before, I'm Maria. I work on the partner and alliances side of things here at Mouseflow. And essentially, Mouseflow it's software that it's meant to track website behavioral data. Okay. A little background of ourselves. So we are a Danish company. We were founded back in 2009 in Denmark. That's where our headquarters are in Copenhagen. But apart from that, we also have offices in the US and we're quite remote friendly. So we have team members all over. A little bit of what it's actually Mouseflow. So essentially, it's a platform to capture the digital experience. Ideally, we try to be as intuitive as possible interface to make sure that our users get value quite fast out of the tool, instead of just going through weeks of implementation and very complex tools. We try to keep it quite simple. Quite connected to today's topic, I just wanted to give you an overview of the different challenges that we see when we talk to clients. So it could vary anything from that we have clients that don't have any actionable insights. They have very complex tools in place, things like that. But essentially, one of the top challenges that we encounter is low conversions, and that's something we encounter every day, right? So clients come to us saying, I want to increase conversions, and then we have to kind of break it down to see what exactly the conversion means to them, and these small 1% changes that Danjo you were mentioning. So essentially, how it's different from, for example, Google Analytics and these other traditional analytics tool is that instead of tracking what happened, so for example, I'm losing conversions here, we try to uncover the why. So the reason behind why certain users, for example, dropped on a certain part of the user journey. Okay. I'm going to explain briefly the different functionalities, and we'll go now just 5 minutes to go over the tool to show you a couple of these things live. But essentially, the way it works is that Mouseflow will install a tracking script on the website that we want to track. Thanks to that, we'll start capturing sessions, and we'll be able to offer the session replay for all of them. So you can always go back and watch what each session did what and how they navigated and so on. So the tangible part of things. With the data, we're able to fit everything else. So we're able to fit heat maps and these other functionalities that I'm going to talk on now. But essentially, heat maps, that's something Danjo mentioned as well quite a lot today in terms of tracking where clicks are going, scroll percentages or certain pages, where the attention is going, all of these information, so that we're able to track that. And when we're talking about conversion optimization, it's journeys is one of the main features that we use to track that. Essentially, it's just to understand how the users navigate and which ones are the most common paths. I can show you in the tool now a couple of examples of this, but essentially it's just to gain visibility on the most common user journeys and making sure they are up to optimize as possible. With that in mind, with those journeys in mind, ideally we'll track funnel analytics. So that Mouseflow will track those specific paths that they repeat themselves quite a lot to go a bit more in depth into each of them, understanding how conversion looks like, how conversion varies from different segments of users, how we could make those small improvements, and so on. And then one of the last parts of conversions that we tend to see sometimes is form analytics. So for example, if we're talking about e-com, it will be a checkout form, a shipping information form, these kind of forms we tend to see quite a lot. And again, we track the interactions within each part of the form to make sure that it's as optimized as possible. Another functionality that we offer is user feedback. So essentially the ability to create feedback surveys within Mouseflow itself. And the difference with other tools will be to have the opportunity to decide when to trigger this survey. So based on certain behaviors, so you can be very specific into, who do you want to ask these questions to, but also in which part of their user journey, their moment, or when they've done certain behavior. And lastly, when we're talking about conversion optimizations, I want to emphasize how important it is to make sure that yes, we're gonna tweak, create these small tweaks and trying to get those small improvements, but the very first step will be to understand friction on a certain page and in the website in general. And we have our own methods to do that, which that's what I wanted to show you today, a little overview of how we track friction, which at the end of the day, if you're not, we cannot move forward and start implementing these UX changes if the page itself has some base issues. So I'm gonna go into Mouseflow and show you how friction looks like. So essentially, this is Mouseflow. Again, we're gonna go very top level today, but happy to take separate meetings if anyone is interested. Essentially, on this option here, you'll see all the different functionalities, and I'm gonna show today friction. Essentially, we have our own way to identify friction based on our experience, and these are these events that over the past years we've identified as friction. So essentially, there are click errors. Those are JavaScript errors, click rages when a user clicks multiple times on a certain element, dead clicks when a user clicks somewhere that it's not clickable. So particularly interesting to underlie these kind of small UX tweaks. 404s when they get bounced out of a certain page, when they navigate too fast on a certain page, and submit failure. So whenever they try to submit a form and that fails, those we capture out of the box. Okay, and based on with that information, we create the friction insights here on a dashboard overview to be able to show you where you should put your attention into. Essentially, it's just gonna break down based on the different friction happens, the occurrences, the different ones. You can navigate a bit more in terms of which pages you should focus on based on different criteria. So we usually take into account the page popularity. So we want to make sure it's, those small changes are as impactful as possible and we impact as much traffic as possible. But we also take into account, if that user left the page because of that friction, the severity of it, session dropped, all this kind of information. And if I go a bit more in depth, it will show me exactly here, for example, the pages I should focus on. This is mouseflow.com. So the data we're seeing here is the data of Mouseflow itself. So I get to see all the total clicks, errors, and issues here based on the different pages. Shows me the occurrences, and then I can navigate based if I want to see a click rate or a dead click or click errors and so on. So I do have some examples. So for example, this is quite concerning to me particularly because that's under my department. And I'm seeing some click errors, so JavaScript errors on this particular page, which is a form where potential partners can apply to get, get in touch with us to see how we could work together. And from here, I can see that I have occurrences on click errors on that particular page. I could even see in which elements that's happening with CSS selector here. So here will show me on the, which I've explored that already, but on the email form, whenever they try to leave their email so we can contact them, that's triggering a JavaScript error. So that's a big thing for our team to fix. How we realize about that? So essentially, once I get here in the summary, I can go through the different sessions that had that exact issue. So for example, it will open up here the list of session recording that had that exact issue. And from here itself, I will just go and watch a few recordings to get those conclusions. But yeah, essentially that's what I wanted to show when it comes to friction. I feel like for the sake of time, and I believe we do have some questions, I'm gonna end the demo here, but I'm happy to walk you guys through the functionalities. It doesn't need to be long, but I don't know, 20, 30-minute session. We'll leave my contact info after the session, so you guys can reach out and we can go through it a bit more in depth. Okay. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I'll hand it over for you, Dancho, for the Q&A part because I'm aware of the time. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean that brings us at the end of the kind of a presentation of the webinar today. So we hope you found the the session valuable and that you will be putting a CRO higher up on your priority list as a method for growth of your website. So it is really about evolution rather than kind of revolution. I think the deck that we kind of went through today will be shared after the webinar with you. So if you kind of are interested more in terms of like us helping you with those 1% wins, feel free to book a quick zero discovery call with us, like, and or scan. You can scan either the QR code on the left or contact Brad, or if you're kind of more interested to kind of like trialing Mouseflow, and learn more about it, there is like a free plan. You could scan the QR code on the right, or get in touch with Maria. She'll be kind of more than happy to help out or to kind of walk you through more in depth.
Yeah, just a quick note here. I'm just gonna chat here right on the chat my email that they can reach out in case anyone would like to get help with the trial. As you mentioned, with that CRO, they can access a free trial. But I'll be happy to assist with it if anyone would like to get a bit more help on that.
All right, so maybe would love to maybe open the floor for any questions that someone might have. Like, I know we got some through some questions through the registration when participants were registering, but maybe first to see if anybody on the live session here would have any questions. We're happy to answer first. If no questions for now, you could always ask whenever you want, but I can maybe take some of the questions that came through the registration form. So one was a question was, are you seeing traffic from LLMs or ChatGPTs, Geminis, Claudes behave differently? And if you have any kind of specific insights on this channel. So as obviously there is a lot of hype around the LLMs, and like a lot of future bets are placed there, that's going to be like primary place where users would kind of engage in the product discovery and so on. I was actually, while kind of doing like the audits, I was actually pretty curious to kind of see whether we actually have like traffic from them. So again, using Mouseflow, we could actually filter session based on source, and we could see sessions from ChatGPT primarily. So what I can say about that was that, yeah, there were some, not in a significant volume, but definitely they're comparing to a year ago, we see more and more. What can be said about those ones that I kind of like viewed is that it seemed that the traffic or the sessions coming on the website felt that they have like those were sessions with more higher purchase intent. They were mainly landing on product pages, and then they actually spend more time on the product pages, examining the different information on the product pages. So my hypothesis is that obviously not always sometimes the LLMs can hallucinate. So my assumption is that they were kind of validating that maybe some pre-discovery has happened in the LLMs, but they were just kind of verifying that maybe the information it's accurate when it comes to the product descriptions. And then definitely we saw some of few of them resulting in a subsequent purchase. But I haven't run kind of more of a quantitative analysis to kind of see whether they convert on overall better than sessions coming from other sources, like whether it's I don't know, email or SEO or PPC or social. I was just kind of more curious about the replay session and the user behavior. So those were kind of like the findings that I've seen. I'm not sure if Maria, you have like anything like on your side that you have kind of noticed or in conversation with any of your clients.
Not particularly, but I think that's something it's starting to pick up now. So especially with fraud recommendations, things like that, we're starting to see that more companies rely on resources in terms of optimizing that. And then we'll have to, I believe we don't have just enough data to see how that impacts when it comes to the behavior that those users do on the site. But we're seeing that as a trend in terms of that will come very soon. That will have a lot of traffic on pages that are coming directly from from ChatGPT and so on.
Thanks for sharing. I think the other question that came was regarding Microsoft Clarity. So the question was, do you rate Microsoft Clarity as a CRO tool? So Microsoft Clarity, it's another similar tool like a Mouseflow. So the answer is yes. In the short answer, it's yes. It is like a tool that you could use for a CRO optimization, UX optimization. There are kind of some differences, obviously, as with every tool. I'll just try to maybe very shortly just kind of explain the differences I've observed. So, one difference, for example, if I compare Microsoft Clarity with Mouseflow, would be around data ownership. So, for an example, with Mouseflow, you own your own data, while Clarity, they can use the data to train their, for example, AI. On the pricing side, though, Microsoft Clarity, it's, for example, completely free. Mouseflow, it's a paid tool, but also it has like a, as Maria pointed out, like a free plan as well. I think both tools are compliant, from kind of like GDPR perspective. I would say Mouseflow, on the other hand, like they do offer like a little bit more capabilities when it comes to the friction insights, the form analytics, and the journey mapping, which they're more kind of basic or they're not existing in Microsoft Clarity. I would say that another differentiator is that Mouseflow currently only supports optimization and monitoring of websites, while with Clarity you could monitor apps, native apps if you have. So those would be kind of like a little bit like differences. Definitely, you could use both for an example, even in the same time. You could use Microsoft Clarity for more of a kind of a more broad monitoring. But I would say if you kind of want to kind of get more, I don't know, like mature or like to kind of deep dive into kind of more user journeys, funnels, then it's kind of where kind of Mouseflow would adds more depth into the entire kind of behavioral analysis. So yeah, hopefully that kind of gives a little bit more of a context and information on Microsoft Clarity. So those were kind of like the questions. Another one I see coming in the chat. Let me just open. Do you understand? So I think that we have a question from Joanne. No, sorry. First, it's Sophie. You mentioned the power of 1% rule and compound revenue optimization. For a team with limited time and budget, how would you recommend how do you recommend we prioritize which changes to do first? So that's a great question. I think, this is kind of where the whole discussion of kind of eliminating the gut feeling, and more kind of focusing on data-driven recommendations with kind of these kind of extra tools like Mouseflow comes. But I would kind of use a framework and kind of look at all those kind of recommendations, or like what we could do to improve through a framework, like looking at potential, importance, and ease. So I'll just kind of clarify what do I mean with those three. So potential would be how much more improvement can be made, right? So we could see where like the major challenges happen, and what affects the most. So if we improve there, the potential for improvement in conversion would be the highest. Then we also need to look at the importance, right? So where do you focus the optimization? So for an example, if 50% of the users lands on a product page, even a tiny optimization on those pages, because represent 50% of your traffic, would have a 10x more impact than kind of completely revamping a landing page that only 1% of your traffic lands. So that's also important aspect of it. And then the ease. So how simple, easy it is to implement. Also, like with the ease comes like cost. So I would say like we need to kind of, when we kind of look at recommendations, we try to kind of rank the recommendations and assign like a certain score across these three areas, and that kind of guides basically the conversation in terms of where it makes sense to focus optimizing first. So hopefully that kind of gives an answer on that. Trina, do we have like more time for more questions, or?
Yeah, there's about 3 or 4 minutes left, Dancho.
Yeah. Okay. So there is another one from Joanne on the stat recommendation to invest 38% and increase. Oh, sorry, just on the stat recommendation to invest 38% and increase social media investment. Could you outline which platforms and tactics you believe will most effectively reduce cost of acquisition and drive scalable growth? John, would you mind like opening the mic and just a little bit clarifying the question? I cannot just recall on which specific statistics you refer.
Hi, Dancho. It was on your UK stats. One of the yeah. So it was 62% update and user experience on the site, and then 42% explore new marketplaces, and then 38% invest more in social media. So it was just around where do you see like the opportunities there, the channels to focus attention on? Yeah.
Okay. So you refer on those kind
Social
of like
media.
Yeah. So those were like statistics provided by this kind of national statistics body. There was no kind of there was not like going into details in terms of within each of those kind of like, I would say, buckets, what actually is the most effective. So it was kind of more of a macro, more general trends. Like where like a retailers would focus more, because there was a panel of 220 retailers, and again they divide them in 6 different categories, whether it's fashion, home and garden, beauty, and so on and so forth. So I would say that it really would depend also on the business, right? On the vertical. I mean, for some businesses like fashion, certain kind of social media channels would be more important than, for an example, do it yourself, right? Or garden, because for some of our clients, the actual target customer, it is let's say a farmer, right? And then for others, it's kind of more high premium affluential trendsetter. And then definitely they use different platforms. One would maybe more rely on more visual media, like Instagram, maybe TikTok, while like the farmer would kind of like maybe focus on more other channels. So it's really kind of hard to say, but there was no any kind of specifics on that, if you refer to that kind of slide. Okay. Anyone else from the audience maybe feel more courageous and brave for a last question? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. We will be sharing the deck. Maria, my apologies. I actually did notice that, like, the email will correct, your email address when we send the deck. So then everybody has the correct one. And yeah, thanks for your time, and feel free to kind of reach out either to myself or to Maria if you want to kind of further discuss, and, any topic of interest for your own, business. So thanks a lot for joining us today, and wish you a great continuation of the week.
Thank you, Dancho, for hosting it. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining.
Okay, bye bye.